I was barefoot on my porch, the wood warm under my feet, and my daughter Maya was sitting beside me, drawing chalk hearts across the step with the kind of peace only a child understands. The air was quiet. The sun was high. My garden had just started to bloom. That morning was meant to be slow, soft, and silent. Until they came. 5 people in matching polos and khaki pants walked toward my property with the kind of confidence only someone entitled enough to believe they own what they do not has. Their Oak Hollow HOA badges shone under the sun. Clipboards in hand, they moved in sync like a trained unit. I stood up slowly. One woman stepped ahead of the group. She had pale skin, stiff blonde curls, and a forced smile that looked like it had been sharpened instead of practiced. Her name said Karen. She walked up to the edge of my fence, glanced at the no trespassing sign like it was a joke, then pulled a thick folder from her bag and taped it to my wooden post. The top page read, Violation Notice. Unauthorized livestock. Non-compliant structure. Illegal exterior paint. 27 pages long, all lies. She met my eyes without blinking and said, This land is no longer yours. My daughter froze. Her chalk dropped. I stepped forward with calm in my chest, but fire in my bones. I asked for her name. She answered with pride. Karen Whitmore, president of the Oak Hollow Homeowners Association. Her voice was polished. Her tone was clean. Her words cut deep. According to Section 8 of Community Expansion Code, she said, Parcel 42 is now within our jurisdiction. Effective immediately. Behind her, the other agents stapled orange violation signs across my front gate, my fence, and even the edge of my barn. Restricted area. Pending HOA reclamation. That was the moment the past in me woke up. Because what Karen did not know was that I was not just a simple black woman with a farmhouse, a garden, and some goats. I was a former attorney. I had worked for a land rights nonprofit. I had fought 3 zoning cases in 2 states. And I had receipts. Real ones, digital ones, redundant backups, and notarized copies of every document that proved this land was mine. I had cameras hidden in the wind chimes, a motion-activated GoPro inside the birdhouse, and a direct line to the county records office. As Karen smiled like she had already won, I pressed one button on my phone. Live stream began, then another. The HOA notice was sent to my attorney, my sister, and the sheriff all at once. Within 10 minutes, it was stored across 5 cloud drives, backed up, labeled, and time-stamped. They thought I would fold. They thought I would apologize, beg, or back down. They did not expect the cameras. They did not expect the law books. And they did not expect what happened next. Because the moment they tried to step toward my barn, they triggered a silent alert. Beep, snap, flash. The cameras blinked to life. I kept my eyes on Karen. She kept pretending she wasn't nervous. But her hands were tight. Her voice had an edge. And even though she said she was here to help the community, everything about her presence screamed control. That was not the first time she had done this. That much was clear. But this time, she had picked the wrong woman. Now I know what you're thinking. Why would an HOA target a quiet woman like me? Why this land? Why now? What made Karen Whitmore think she could walk on a private property, declare it hers, and tape violations to a fence with a child inside the home? And what gave her the confidence to do it so boldly? Let me take you back. 3 months earlier, I bought this land with everything I had. After years of city noise, court deadlines, and late nights raising my daughter alone, I found this small farmhouse just outside the town line. It had no HOA. I made sure of that. I checked every boundary, called the county twice, and confirmed with the title office. The woman on the phone even said, "You're free and clear. Welcome to peace." And peace was what I found. For the first few weeks, I planted a garden, repaired the barn, and named my 2 goats Freedom and Fries. My daughter laughed louder than I'd heard in years. My dog, Honey, stopped barking at the wind. I thought we had made it. Then a flyer appeared on my fence. "Join Oak Hollow Community Watch," it read. I threw it away. Then an email came. "You may be unaware, but your address is now within our extended jurisdiction." I ignored it. Then came Karen. Polite. Friendly. Too friendly. She complimented the color of my barn, asked about my chickens, and finally said, We're excited to bring your home into the Oak Hollow family. We got some guidelines to help you comply." I told her plainly, "I'm not in your HOA." She tilted her head, smiled wider. "Oh, you will be, sooner than you think." That moment should have made me afraid, but it didn't. It made me angry, because I knew what this was. Not confusion, not miscommunication. It was a land grab, a quiet one. Paper first, then pressure, then paint, then property. They call it community integration, but we know what it is. And what Karen didn't know is that the woman she called just a simple black woman wasn't raised to be silent. I was raised to survive, and I was about to show her what survival looked like when you try to steal land from the wrong woman. Angela Marie Jackson was 54 years old today. She closed on that little slice of earth, just past the Pine Line and 2 dirt roads away from the nearest gas station. For 30 years, she had taught public school in Houston, Texas. 3rd grade, science and reading. She was the kind of teacher who always kept granola bars in her drawer for the kids who came to school hungry, and extra gloves in winter for the ones who didn't have any. By the time she retired, she had given away half her salary and most of her peace. But she never lost her sense of purpose. She didn't want a fancy condo or some gated retirement home with shuffleboard and brunch. Angela wanted land, real land, a place where the soil felt like something you could pray into, where silence wasn't a luxury, but the background to life. She found it in a forgotten corner of Cypress Ridge County. The house was old, chipped quiet. It came with a rusty windmill, 2 overgrown apple trees, and the sound of frogs at night. She bought it outright with her pension, her savings, and the final check from the district. No mortgage, no debt, no neighbors for 3 lots. Most importantly, no HOA. She didn't just hope it. She verified it. She spent weeks combing through zoning maps, county clerk records, and aerial footage on Google Earth. She spoke with a lawyer. She even visited the local zoning board in person. She wasn't going to be bossed around anymore. Not by school boards, not by committees, and certainly not by a homeowners association. She wanted to plant her own seeds, paint her own fence, raise chickens if she wanted, let the grass grow wild, and live without being told her yard was non-compliant. And for a while, it was everything she dreamed. Angela spent her mornings sipping coffee from a mismatched mug while watching the sunrise over her fence line. She planted tomatoes, cucumbers, and wildflowers, built a little greenhouse, adopted 4 hens and 1 noisy rooster she named Pastor because he never stopped talking. Her dog, Honey, slept on the porch. Maya played in the dirt with sticks and sang songs to the sky. She baked bread for the church food drive, led a Saturday reading circle at the town library. Life was simple, clean, hers, until the knock came. It was a Thursday, late morning. The sky was gray. Angela had been pulling weeds near the fence line when she heard the car door slam. She wiped her hands on her jeans and stood up. A white SUV with tinted windows was parked just outside the gate. The woman who stepped out wore beige from neck to heel. Beige suit, beige heels, beige purse. Even her nails were a soft ivory, like she didn't want to disturb the air. She smiled too fast, walked too confidently. "Good morning," she said in that voice. The one Angela knew well. The voice that wasn't asking. The voice that expected agreement. Angela returned the smile politely. "I'm Karen Whitmore," the woman said, "president of Oak Hollow HOA. We've noticed you've made some unpermitted changes and would love to help you bring your property up to code." Angela blinked. "I'm not part of your HOA," she said. Karen chuckled like Angela had made a cute mistake. "Oh, I understand the confusion, but we've recently expanded. Some of the rural zones are now included in our new overlay. It's all part of the county's development initiative. Totally standard." Angela stepped forward. "My land isn't in Oak Hollow. I checked the maps myself. You don't have jurisdiction here." Karen's smile stiffened. "Boundaries shift. It's a living document. But we're here to help. We want to make sure your structures are safe, your animals are registered, and your landscape fits the community aesthetic." Angela exhaled through her nose and closed the gate. "Have a good day, Miss Whitmore." Karen stood there for a moment like she wasn't used to being dismissed. Then she nodded, smiled too wide again, and walked back to her car. The next morning, a yellow notice was taped to Angela's gate. HOA violation. unauthorized fencing, improper storage structure, poultry noise complaint. Angela pulled it down and threw it away. 2 days later, another appeared. This time, it included a fine, $200. Then came a cease and desist letter for illegal agricultural use of residential land. She laughed out loud when she read it. She didn't farm. She had a garden and 5 birds. She called the county. They told her no new zoning changes had been filed. No expansion had been approved. She was still clear, still outside HOA lines. But the letters didn't stop, each one more aggressive, each one with bigger fines. Then came the emails, then the visits. 2 men with clipboards walked her property while she was in town getting groceries. Her trail, Kim caught them taking pictures of her barn. When she asked the sheriff about it, he shrugged and said unless they broke something or entered the house, there wasn't much he could do. It's all paperwork, he said. HOAs get pushy, but unless they damage something or trespass directly, it's hard to stop. Angela installed more cameras, added locks to her gates, put up new no trespassing signs. The following week, a man in a golf shirt and mirror glasses rang her doorbell and handed her a manila envelope. Inside was a contract, a buyout offer. It was signed by Karen Whitmore and 2 board members. It offered Angela $10,000 to voluntarily integrate into the Oak Hollow HOA family and sign over water access rights from her land's creek bed. There was a note attached. Join quietly. We'll waive all past violations. No more stress. Just sign and enjoy community peace. Angela burned the contract in her fire pit. The next day, her water barrel was tipped over. A week later, someone spray-painted comply across her back fence in red paint. The footage showed a teenager in a hoodie, but the face was never visible. Then came the trash. HOA newsletters stuffed in her mailbox. HOA flags draped over her front fence. One night, she found a dead squirrel nailed to her tool shed. It was no longer just paperwork. It was psychological. But Angela did not scare easy. She had spent years fighting for kids who had nothing. She had walked through metal detectors, dodged budget cuts, and stood between angry parents and crying students. She was not about to surrender her home to a beige suit with a title and a smile. She contacted a land use attorney in the next county, a woman named Rochelle Banks. Rochelle was sharp, steady, and had already helped 2 families in the area fight off similar HOA encroachments. Angela handed over every letter, email, photograph, timestamp, and recording. Then she waited. But Karen didn't. One evening, Angela was inside preparing dinner when her dog Honey began barking at the back of the property. Angela looked out the window and saw 3 silhouettes near the barn. One of them held a flashlight. Another held a tape measure. Angela grabbed her phone, turned on the security feed, and watched them take pictures through the windows of the barn. She called the sheriff. By the time he arrived, they were gone. But they had left something behind. A pink ribbon, surveyor's tape, with the words Phase 2 boundary written in permanent marker. Angela handed it to the deputy. He nodded grimly. You're not the only one, he said, but you might be the only one fighting. Later that night, Angela found a second envelope under her front mat. This one contained only a single line typed in bold. You still have time to cooperate, or we'll take what's needed. Angela stared at the page for a long time. Then she looked outside, past her fence, past the creek, to the line of trees that marked her border. This wasn't about a fence color or a chicken coop. This was about control. This was about land. And it was about to get ugly. Angela didn't sleep the night she found the envelope. She sat at her kitchen table with the ceiling fan turning slowly overhead, its rhythm broken only by the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old farmhouse settling into the dirt. Her fingers traced the edge of the typed threat again and again. You still have time to cooperate, or we'll take what's needed. The words had no logo, no signature, no return address, just threat, bold and clean. The next morning, she made 3 calls. First to Rochelle Banks, the land use attorney who had helped her file a cease and desist letter a week earlier. Then to the county commissioner's office. And last, to a local veteran who owned a security company 2 towns over. By the end of the day, Angela had installed 6 new trail cameras hidden across her fence line, one under the birdhouse, two inside the barn, one above the coop, and another behind the rain barrel. Each one was motion-triggered, backed up to the cloud, and set to send immediate alerts to her phone and Rochelle's email. She wasn't just defending her home now. She was documenting a crime scene in progress. Rochelle filed an official complaint with the county, citing unlawful harassment, attempted land seizure, and property intimidation. Angela attached photographs of the vandalism, timestamps from the trespassers, and copies of every fabricated citation she had received. But paperwork moved slow. Too slow, because the HOA wasn't slowing down. That same week, 2 of the cameras went dark. No alert, no sign, just silence. Angela went out to check and found both had been ripped clean off the trees, cords dangling like broken limbs. The ground below was kicked up like someone had stomped the grass intentionally to leave no clear footprints. 2 nights later, she found her fence split wide open, not cut with a saw, pulled apart, screws missing, nails bent, the gate sagging like it had been yanked open by something in a hurry. She repaired it in silence. No calls this time, just rage. Then came the chicken. Angela had 5 hens. One morning, she found 4 waiting for feed, as usual. The 5th, Stitch, was missing. Angela searched the coop, the yard, the trees. An hour later, she found her. Stitch was laid out on the front step, neck broken, eyes open, wings stretched wide like someone had posed her there. No blood, no prints, just the body, cold and intentional. Angela stood still. For nearly 5 minutes, she didn't move. Then she gathered the small bird into her arms, dug a hole behind the barn, and buried her with quiet ceremony. That night, she didn't cry. She planned. She poured herself a glass of water, opened her laptop, and began searching pipeline proposals in the county. It was a long shot. She didn't think she'd find anything. But the word cooperate kept ringing in her ears, and something about the creek had always felt targeted. An hour later, she found it. Project Clearfield, an energy corridor initiative pushed by a partnership between Oak Hollow HOA and a private development company called Daxon River Holdings. Buried in the appendix of a county proposal request was a small map. Parcel 42, her land, was marked in yellow. A note beside it read, "Last holdout. High priority. Pending compliance." Angela sat back. She had known they wanted something. She had guessed it was water rights, maybe the land itself for resale. But this was industrial. Bigger. Belmano. They didn't want her barn. They wanted what was under it. And she was the last thing in their way. She printed everything. The maps. The funding letters. The signed board notes from HOA meetings. Then she made a video. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't fancy. Just her face, tired but clear, sitting at her kitchen table in front of the paperwork. "Hi," she said, looking into the camera. "My name is Angela Jackson. I'm 54 years old, a retired school teacher, a mother, a landowner, and today I found out that a group of people has been trying to take my property from me, quietly, illegally, and with force." She told them everything. The first knock, the fake violations, the bribe, the broken cameras, the dead chicken. She showed them the pipeline map, the HOA logo, the signatures. "This isn't just happening to me," she said. "It's happening all over. And if you think it can't happen to you, I'm here to tell you. They count on you thinking that." Then she posted it to TikTok, to YouTube, to Facebook, to every local news inbox in the region. By the next morning, the video had 40,000 views. By that evening, a news van was parked at the end of her drive. She gave him the folder, the county permits, the threat letter, everything. The story ran that night. Former teacher faces HOA takeover over hidden pipeline deal. Within 24 hours, the video had gone viral. Comments poured in. "That happened to my aunt in Florida. My dad lost his land the same way in Colorado. Karen needs to be in jail." Angela didn't reply to any of them. She was busy installing a new alarm system. Because 2 days later, the final straw came. It was just past midnight when her phone buzzed. Motion detected in barn. She sat up, checked the live feed. 3 men were inside her barn. Black shirts, black gloves. One of them carried a crowbar. Angela pressed the silent alarm. Outside, floodlights exploded to life. Inside the barn, hidden motion sensors triggered strobe, LEDs, and a sound cannon that screamed at 110 decibels. The men panicked. One slammed into a wall. Another dropped a clipboard. The third tried to cover his face with a hoodie, but tripped over a shovel. Angela watched it all from her kitchen monitor, her fingers shaking not with fear, but with adrenaline. The feed captured every second. Faces, voices, license plates. When the sheriff arrived, they were gone. But they'd left something behind. A brown leather folder, dropped near the back door of the barn. Angela picked it up with gloves, took it inside, opened it slowly. Inside were maps, meeting transcripts, legal drafts, a document labeled Project Clearfield, and one note paperclipped to the top. Angela Marie Jackson, target, high risk, objective, removed by any means. She stared at those words for a long time. Then she called Rochelle. Then she called the reporter. Then she opened her laptop again. Hi again, she said into the camera. This is an update. Tonight, they broke into my barn. They triggered alarms. They left behind this folder. She held it up. Inside is proof. Names. Plans. They were going to take my land and destroy it for a pipeline. And they were going to do it in secret. The second video reached 100,000 views in a single night. The next morning, the sheriff came with an investigator. The morning after that, 2 agents from the Department of Energy appeared. Angela gave them everything. The feeds, the photos, the folder. And then she said something simple. I'm not moving. They didn't ask her to. By the end of the week, Project Clearfield was on hold. Oak Hollow HOA issued a public statement denying involvement, but the internet had already judged them. Karen Whitmore was suddenly unreachable. Her office phone rang out. Her name was removed from the HOA website. Angela, meanwhile, began to hear from people she had never met. A rancher in Arizona who had signed under pressure. A couple in Alabama who had lost their house. A veteran in Georgia who had been fined into bankruptcy. And all of them said the same thing. You were the first to fight back. Angela didn't feel like a warrior. She still fed her chickens at 6 in the morning. Still drove Maya to reading group on Saturdays. But every time she passed the barn and saw the repaired lock, the fresh lights, and the burned patch of grass where they had run, she remembered one thing. They thought she was simple, but they had mistaken kindness for weakness. And now they were about to find out what it meant when a woman who had spent her life protecting others decided to protect herself. Angela Jackson had faced a classroom full of screaming 8-year-olds with less fear than what she was about to do. She stood in the hallway of a downtown law office, holding a plastic folder packed with every piece of evidence she had collected over the last 2 months. Photos, emails, screenshots, a printed transcript of the HOA's own meeting notes, casually stating the plan to remove her by any means. Across from her sat Rochelle Banks, her land use attorney. But this time, they weren't alone. To Rochelle's right was a tall, broad-shouldered man with wireframe glasses and a briefcase that looked like it could carry the Constitution. His name was Marcus Duval, a civil rights lawyer based out of Austin, known for chewing up predatory housing developers like Gristle. He had marched in suits against private prison land grabs. He had taken HOAs to court before, and he had never lost a case. Marcus flipped through the folder in silence. Angela didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were stone. She wasn't looking for pity. She was preparing for war. When he finally looked up, he said one sentence. "This is federal." Angela nodded. They filed the formal complaint with the Department of Justice the same day. Along with it, they submitted a restraining order against the Oak Hollow HOA and named its president, Karen Whitmore, directly. Angela had also handed over her footage, all 9 camera angles, 3 hard drives, and the folder labeled Project Clearfield. Nothing had been redacted. Nothing held back. The DOJ sent the case to the FBI. 3 days later, agents arrived at Angela's house unannounced but respectful. 2 men in dark suits. 1 woman. They asked questions, took notes, asked for timestamps. They didn't roll their eyes. They didn't tell her she was imagining things. They listened, and then they took copies of everything. The following Monday, Angela received a knock at her door. She opened it slowly, expecting a neighbor, maybe Rochelle again. But it was Karen, back in beige. But this time alone. Karen had that same tight smile. But there was something in her eyes now, desperation. The kind that smells like fear and still pretends to be perfume. "We need to talk," Karen said. Angela stepped outside, letting the door close behind her. Karen wasted no time. "We know what you've been doing online," she said. "This crusade of yours has gone too far. You're putting people at risk. You're putting yourself at risk." Angela didn't respond. Karen pulled a document from her purse. Folded, already creased. "This is our final offer," she said. "A private settlement. We'll pay you market value for your land, plus 10%. You can walk away clean. No drama. No court. Just peace." Angela glanced at the paper, but didn't touch it. Karen's eyes narrowed. "If you refuse," she said, "we will initiate eminent domain seizure through state utility law. The board is already voting. You'll be out before winter. You can't stop it." Angela smiled, just slightly, because inside her jacket pocket was a small mic, recording everything. And parked just down the dirt road was an unmarked SUV. Inside sat 2 federal agents. The moment Karen finished speaking, one of them opened the barn door behind Angela. "Federal agents," he called. "Ms. Whitmore, we'd like you to come with us." Karen froze. Her mouth opened, closed. Her eyes darted between Angela and the badge. This was a setup," she said. Angela didn't move. "No, this was the truth. You just chose the wrong woman to lie to." The agents stepped forward. Karen tried to walk, but her knees buckled. They didn't cuff her. Not yet, but they didn't let her go either. Angela watched them lead her away. She didn't feel joy. She felt justice. The next day, the FBI raided the Oak Hollow HOA office. Boxes of files were loaded into black vans. Laptops, hard drives, phone records. Several board members were named in the warrant. One tried to flee the state. Another attempted to delete email archives, but failed. The charges ranged from fraud to conspiracy to violation of civil land use protections. Angela's video footage was included in the official case file as Exhibit A. National news picked up the story by Friday. "Texas woman exposes HOA pipeline scheme," read the headline. Angela sat in her kitchen and watched her face appear on television for the first time in her life. Not as a mugshot, not as a victim, but as a witness, a fighter, a symbol. Her inbox overflowed. Journalists called. Church groups emailed. A filmmaker in New York wanted to talk documentary rights. But Angela wasn't looking for fame. She just wanted her land. Still, she knew something had changed. This wasn't just about her anymore. That same night, Rochelle filed a civil suit. Angela Jackson versus Oak Hollow HOA and Daxon River Holdings. The lawsuit was massive. It listed 23 counts of targeted harassment, emotional distress, attempted fraud, illegal surveillance, and breach of privacy. Angela demanded damages, but also reforms. She wanted the HOA disbanded. She wanted a formal apology. She wanted public record correction. And most importantly, she wanted a message sent. You can't take land from people just because you have money. The trial began 3 months later. By then, the hashtag #StandWithAngela was trending across Twitter. Thousands of users changed their profile pictures to her photo. Veterans posted from wheelchairs. Teachers from schoolyards. Farmers from the fields. She had become something more than a defendant. She had become a line in the sand. In court, Angela sat tall. She wore a dark green blazer. No muck-up, no unity, just her hands folded in front of her. Her voice didn't shake once. She told the jury about the knock on the door, the bribe, the chicken, the fence, the folder. She showed them the video of Karen threatening her on her own porch. The courtroom was silent. Karen's lawyers tried to spin it, said Angela had overreacted, that the HOA was misinformed, not malicious, that it was all procedural. Then Marcus stood. He held up the signed board document marked, "Remove by any means." He read the names aloud. Then he asked one question. If this were your mother's land, would this be acceptable? The jury didn't even flinch. They found in favor of Angela on every count. She was awarded full damages. Her land was declared permanently protected under state conservation law. The HOA was fined, disbanded, and placed under investigation. Several board members were indicted on felony charges. Karen Whitmore lost her license, her job, Her home. Angela gained something far more valuable. Freedom that no one could ever question again. And something else. A voice. She began speaking at land rights events. Appeared on national interviews. She started a small nonprofit with Rochelle to help rural families defend their homes. She didn't want credit. She just wanted no one else to bury another chicken in silence. One evening, Angela stood on her porch again. The sky was orange. Maya was reading a book under the apple tree. Honey dozed at her feet. A man from the sheriff's office pulled up slowly. He handed her a letter. No return address. Just a sentence. This isn't over. Angela folded it calmly, tucked it into her pocket, then looked out over her land. Burned once. Reclaimed. Reinforced. And she whispered back, "Neither am I." The sun was sinking behind the line of pines that bordered Angela Jackson's land. That golden kind of light, the kind that made everything look softer, like the world was catching its breath after a long day. Angela stood near the edge of her fence, her hand resting on the top rail worn smooth by years of weather and time. Her boots were dusty. Her sleeves were rolled up. She had just finished turning the soil in her late summer garden. Behind her, Maya laughed somewhere under the trees. Honey barked once, low and content. The barn stood tall and whole again. Its walls had been patched and repainted. The lights had been rewired. The cameras reset. There was no more restricted area sign. No surveyor flags. No violations duct taped to her gate. What remained now was just her home, clean and proud. Alive. In her jacket pocket was the letter, short, anonymous, typed. This isn't over. She had read it once, then folded it with care. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't even afraid. She was resolved. And something more than that. She was ready. She looked out across the property, the breeze tugging at the hem of her shirt. She let it all settle into her chest. The fire, the fight, the fear, and then the peace that came after. They thought I was just a simple woman, just a name on a deed. But I'm not simple when it comes to my roots. My home, my story. Karen had said, "This isn't over." And Angela had whispered, even as they dragged the woman's name through court, "Exactly. It's just beginning." Because what Angela hadn't expected was that her story would spark something bigger than her land. The week after her court victory, over 100 people reached out. Some were strangers. Others were neighbors she hadn't met yet. Some who had watched quietly from behind their fences, wondering if they'd be next. A man in New Mexico had written to say he lost his farm to an HOA that declared his land abandoned while he was in the hospital. A black family in Alabama said their deed had been contested by a neighborhood expansion plan, and when they fought back, their house was declared nuisance. Angela started keeping a list. She printed every email, highlighted names, made a map of counties, communities, zip codes. In the weeks that followed, she launched something simple, quiet even, a digital archive of land disputes. A hub, a resource center for those who had nowhere to go and no lawyer to call. Rochelle helped set up the legal side. Marcus offered to mentor students who wanted to take on property law. A small group of teachers, veterans, and farmers began meeting once a month in her barn. The first time they met, Angela stood up front. No microphone, no speech. She just asked a question. "What's the one thing you thought you owned that they tried to take?" The room was still. Then one woman said, "My father's workshop." A man added, "My mother's trailer." A young man raised his hand, eyes red. "Our name." And Angela nodded. "Then let's take it back, piece by piece." And they did. What began as a local case quickly became a national conversation. The term HOA abuse trended across major platforms. Articles appeared in major papers. Panels invited Angela to speak, but she never traveled far. She liked her porch too much. She liked watching Maya read under the apple trees, liked hearing the chickens cluck in the morning. So instead, she recorded videos. Not flashy ones, just honest ones. She spoke like a teacher, calm, clear, with lesson plans made from pain and patience. She spoke to the veterans in mobile homes, the single moms with inherited lots, the old men who never learned email, but still knew how to read land with their hands. And slowly, something shifted. Counties began reviewing their HOA policies. Lawmakers introduced protective legislation. 3 new lawsuits were filed using Angela's public case. as precedent. And the development company that once funded Project Clearfield, they folded, sold the pipeline rights back to the county for pennies on the dollar. The land Angela stood on that night, under the bleeding sky, was no longer just a plot on a map. It was a marker, a line drawn not with chalk or wire, but with resistance. And as she leaned on her fence post, the crickets beginning their evening chorus, a pickup truck pulled into her drive. The engine shut off. The door creaked. A familiar face stepped out, Rochelle, holding a small cardboard box. They delivered this to the office, she said. Didn't have a return address. Angela took it with a nod, walked it inside, and placed it on her table. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single item, a brass plaque, engraved in bold serif letters. Jackson Land, protected by will, guarded by fire. Angela exhaled through her nose. Not laughter, not sorrow, just a slow release of everything that had been held too tight, too long. She picked up the plaque, stepped back outside, and screwed it into the fence gate herself. She didn't ask anyone for permission. She didn't need to. She walked back to her porch, sat down with a cup of tea, and looked out at the land she had kept. It was no longer about them. It was no longer about Karen. It was about what people do when pushed to the edge, and what they find when they stop stepping back and take one step forward. Angela watched the sky dim to navy. She thought about the first night she stood on that porch, barefoot, chalk dust on her fingers from Maya's little hearts on the steps. Back then, she thought peace was a gift you earned after enough sacrifice. But now she knew the truth. Peace is something you protect, like soil, like blood, like a name. And the people who try to take it from you, they aren't just thieves. They are cowards. Because only cowards use papers instead of fists. Only cowards hide behind committees. Only cowards attack what they don't understand. A simple woman, a quiet life, an untamed garden. But Angela wasn't hiding anymore, and she sure as hell wasn't afraid. So when the next letter came, and it would, she'd be ready. When the next developer sent their smiling face in beige, she'd meet them with documents, cameras, and 1,000 voices behind her. Because the storm they tried to bury with paperwork had become a wildfire. It had burned through silence, across social feeds, through town halls, past courtroom steps, and into the hearts of people who had once whispered, "What if we lose everything?" Now they shouted, "We won't lose again." Angela Jackson, the woman they once called simple, had become a wall they couldn't climb. And as the stars broke open above her land, she whispered a final truth. They thought this was the end. But endings don't happen here. Not where roots go deep. Not where silence ends in thunder. And from the edge of her porch, with the land safe, the night calm, and the barn lights still glowing, she smiled. Not for what had been won, but for what had begun.